Welcome learners. This is a session on comparative literature, which is abbreviated as MEG15. We at IGNOU offer comparative literature as one of the courses under the program Masters of English offered by the School of Humanities, Indira Gandhi National University, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Now, before I move on to discuss what comparative literature is, I take a delight into talking to you about what literature is all about. As we all understand, and you being students of the Masters of English Literature, we all understand that any literature and every literature is the representation of the society. It represents the happenings of the society, and all literature is primarily the outcome of the socio-political and cultural happenings of the society. So, I would say that any social event, any political activity, any kind of economic growth that takes place in a particular society, in a particular country, in a particular, linguistic confine, results in the formation of the literature of that particular nation. Now, when I talk about comparative literature, I would primarily say that, it is a very dynamic and an interdisciplinary field. Because see, what happens is, when we say comparative literature, it says, it invites the students, it calls the students to delve into the world of literary works. Now, these literary works, they analyze, they read, they understand, they compare these literary works. Now, these literary works, number one, they could be different genres. And these literary compositions normally, they could be belonging to different cultures, to different nations, to different languages, and to different historical eras. So comparative literature basically, helps the student to engage into understanding any literature from very different perspectives. Now, see what happens if we generally perceive literature from a global perspective. It could be literature belonging to the European countries. It could be Indian literature. That literature belonging to different kind of different eras. It could be ancient literature. It could be modern literature, written during the Romantic era, classic literature, so etc., etc., etc. Now, the students, what do the students gain when they study comparative literature? Primarily, it gives them, it transforms them. Number one, we can say that it transforms them, and they get a profound understanding of the connections, of the influences. Number one, they get an understanding of the connections. They also get an understanding of the influences, and they develop a unique perspective, because all this goes into shaping the literary landscape across the globe. So comparative literature, therefore, is a very interesting and a very, it calls for more and more students to study comparative literature. Now, comparative literature, when we read comparative literature, it is something that goes, it does not stay within the confines of a nation, within the confines of a language, or within the confines of culture. In other words, we can say that it goes beyond boundaries. It transcends boundaries. So it transcends the confines of linguistic traditions. It transcends the confines of national traditions or nations. And at the same time, it encourages the students to explore the interconnectedness. Now, there definitely is some kind of connection. There definitely is some kind of similarity. There is definitely some kind of underlying commonness between literatures, between the texts written in different nations, in different languages, in different genres. So basically, we try and understand the theme of different genres of literature. We try and find a connect between the literature written during different era, during different, belonging to different nations, belonging to different languages. So you can say it uncovers the nuances and there is a cross-pollination. So all this evolves literature, and all this gives student a creative understanding, because then he is perceiving literature from a very global perspective. So he can understand literature in a very nuanced fashion. He will develop an opinion of his own when he tries and understand literature. Now, when we study comparative literature, another important tenet of comparative literature is an approach which is interdisciplinary, because it invites students to engage with literary theories. We also talk about criticism, and there is also an intersection between literature and other fields, maybe history, philosophy, psychology, arts. So there is this dynamic exploration, and all this leads to a multifaceted understanding of the complexities and the richness of literary expressions. So, it helps us break the boundaries. It helps us, develop an interdisciplinary approach. Another important thing that, comparative literature teaches us is there's a cultural dialogue. Because, for example, if we are talking about Sita, so, maybe, it is interpreted down south. There are certain texts which talk about Sita in a different fashion. They interpret Sita from a different perspective. There could be different writers who would write from their own perspective. Now, this also varies when a female author is perceiving a particular character, is narrating a particular incident. So there is a cultural dialogue, because, any human being, or be it a writer, be it an author, we are all the outcome of our culture. We are the outcome of the societal, the influences of the society that influences us, the culture that influences us, contribute in the making of our persona. And then when we write when we create a plot, or when we create a character, we perceive that character, we create that character, we perceive that narration through our own perspective. And definitely we are the outcome of our own culture. So there is a scope of cultural dialogue when we talk about comparative literature. Now, at the same time, students get a scope to understand diverse cultures, the relationship between the two cultures, and also, they become informed about the different literary works in different cultures. So there is a cross-cultural dialogue. Now, comparative literature comes up with a lot of diversity, and we should embrace this diversity of comparative literature, because, how do we do this? We can do this by, discovering diverse literatures. We should explore the rich traditions from around the world, which includes, maybe I can say works from Asia, from Africa, from Latin America. This is how we will expand the global literary landscape. We should also engage with literary theories. This is again an important aspect of comparative literature. When we talk about comparative literature, the basic understanding is comparative literature. There are theories of comparative literature. How do you compare two different texts? So there has to be some kind of a theoretical understanding. There has to be an underlying theory which helps us in evolving and analyzing the texts. So there definitely, we as students of comparative literature need to engage with literary theories, and it helps us, maybe from the post-colonial studies, then we can move to the feminist criticism, and analyze and interpret the text in our own innovative fashion. It also helps us develop multilingual proficiency. Now, it enhances the linguistic abilities of these students. And how does it do so? By making these students, or by engaging these students with literary works written in multiple languages, and we kind of foster a deeper appreciation for the nuances and the complexities of language, and the complexities of language play an important role, I would say, in shaping the literary expressions or the texts. So, comparative literature again helps us in cultivating a cross-cultural connection, because it forges connection between diverse literary traditions, and also it uncovers the ways in which works from different cultures, from different time zones, engage, and there is a dynamic dialogue, and all this illuminates the experience. It transcends our experience, and we transcend borders. We develop an understanding of the culture of different borders, beyond borders, I would say. So, comparative literature. Now, when we move towards comparative literature, we also need to understand that, as I've mentioned, we have cross-cultural understanding, cross-cultural analysis. We have inter-literary connections also, which means, how the literary texts, how two different literary texts interact with each other. This is something that we try and explore when we read comparative literature. So comparative literature helps us cultivate this interliterary connection, I would say. As I've already mentioned, it helps us develop an interdisciplinary approach. Now, there are certain theories and methodologies which we need to focus on when we read, this comparative literature. See, what happens is, maybe I would say, I would like to give a few minutes to talk on the theories of comparative literature, right from the Romantic movement. As students of English literature, you all have read Romantic movements. So, there was this Romantic movement. Now, Romantic movement, which means we were moving towards, we were moving away from the rules and regulations. We were moving towards beyond the confines of diction. We were moving towards freedom. So, Romantic movement, then I would definitely like to mention comparative literature in terms of Indian culture or the Indian writings, I would say. So, there was this discovery of Sanskrit literature. Now, this German writer who was inspired by the Sanskrit literature, the Sanskrit writer Kalidas, and there was national rivalry also. So, there were three incidents that contributed into the evolution, I would say, of world literature, which we term as, it came up in German, and then we came up with this idea of world literature. Now, as I've already mentioned, there was this Romantic movement, then there was this discovery of Sanskrit literature. Then, the German writers were primarily more interested into Sanskrit writings, and there was this rivalry against the Romantic literature. So, all this contributed into comparative literature, and all this contributed into the evolution of world literature and the theories of comparative literature. So, from world literature, we move to post-colonialism, and then we move to multiculturalism. So, all these are the theories of comparative literature. And then came the concept of liberalization. So, liberalization was basically people were trying to kind of wanted, there was a group of writers, a group of people who believed that they wanted to protect their own culture. They did not want their culture to be invaded. So they wanted to, their writings to be expressing their own culture, expressing their own themes, their own plots, their own desires, their own social issues. And then we move on to globalization. So globalization was definitely, was again the corollary of liberalization. All this contributed all these are the various theories of comparative literature which we need to study when we study this MEG 15 in detail. Now, not to, I need to mention here that translation also plays an important role when we talk about literary theories or comparative literature, because translation, again, there are theories of translation which we as students of comparative literature need to understand, need to read. Translation, why does it play an important role? Because what happens is when a particular text is being translated, the socio-political, the socio-cultural environment of that nation or environment of the background of the person who is rewriting the text, or I would say translating the text, plays an important role, because it definitely influences the writings of the the process of translation, and it is generally termed as the politics of translation. So we need to understand the nuances of translation also involved in the process because it is through translation that we get to know texts from different linguistic regions. So this is how translation helps to overcome the nuances of linguistic barrier, nuances of cultural barriers. We also need to understand, after doing the theories of comparative literature, we need to understand it was followed by modernism, I would say. So classicism, then came neoclassicism, romanticism, realism, and modernism. So, among them, modernism was the most influential trend. And to understand comparative literature and the literary theories, we also need to have a connect, or we also need to understand literature in terms, in perspectives to cultural studies. So, culture studies, which again means we need to understand the oral and the written literature. We also need to have an understanding of the folklore studies. So primarily moving from the discovery of Sanskrit literature and the I would say keen interest of English people in Sanskrit texts, a few of being translated. They were mainly interested in the writings of Kalidas, and they were greatly influenced by the theories of Sanskrit literature, the grammar and other texts. So, primarily the interest in Sanskrit literature, the oral and written literature, the culture studies, folklore studies, all these contribute in the a lot in the I would say framing of comparative literature. So the socio-cultural conditions and all this need to understand. Now, I would definitely like to, when it comes to comparative literature, and we're talking in with reference to the Indian context, I would say, there were ages. If you divide the history or the periodization of the Indian literature, the ancient literature, the ancient Sanskrit literature, which belonged to Vedic age. So, primarily it was divided into two kinds of literature, Vedic literature and the Laukic literature. So, as the word denotes, Vedic literature means the Vedas. And we all know that they are 4 in number: Rig Veda, Yajurved, Samved, and Atharved. Now, along with Vedas, there were Vedangs, which means the Ang of the Vedas, or the the parts or the limbs of the Vedas, and they are 6 in number. I would read them out. First is Shiksha, then the Niruka, then Vyakaran, Chand, Jyotish, and Kalp. So these are the 6 Vedangs. When we talk about ancient Indian literature, we talk about Vedas and the Vedangs. The Vedas are 4 in number and the Vedangs are 6 in number. Then we move to the Laukic literature, which is also termed as Itihas, and Ramayana and Mahabharata, the 2 great epics, come under this category. Now, all this is followed by Kalidasa's Kumarasambhav. Then there are plays of written by Kalidas and plays of Bhasa and all. So primarily, the ancient Indian literature, or you can call it the Vedic literature. So we need to understand when we talk about the comparative literature, and primarily when we talk about the Indian literature, we need to understand the ancient, the periods. So first was the Vedic literature, which was the ancient literature, and then we move to the medieval ages, primarily where there was, it was confined to Bhakti movement. So Bhakti movement played an important role. We have n number of writers who contributed to this movement. And then comes the modern age or the modern period, which is like the pre-independence and the post-independence. There are 2 more important factors or features, key important features, which we need to understand when we talk about comparative literature. We also need to focus on Dalit literature. And last but not the least, feminist literature. So all these literatures need a thorough study and a thorough understanding. All these theories need a thorough analysis of these theories, thorough understanding of these theories when we talk about comparative literature, which is a very, very upcoming and an interesting field. Now, we're left with some time, so maybe we can talk about, how do you explore classics to begin with? When we are beginning with the practice of comparative literature, I've given you a gist of the theories of comparative literature, what comparative literature is all about, and how does it help the student to understand the relation between the two, the two literatures or the trends or the 2 genres belonging to different eras, different nations, different languages, different cultures, and then the perspectives. The theory, that we apply to them. And also, as I mentioned, Dalit literature and literature, the feminist concept. So it gives you a very global perspective when you talk about comparative literature. Now, there are literary traditions from around the world, and when we apply these literary concepts, or when we apply these concepts to selected texts, we can uncover the nuances and we can definitely come up with a comparativeness of literary works. There is an interconnection. For example, when we talk about the Greek drama of Sophocles and the Sanskrit masterpiece by Kalidas, we can embark on a journey which helps us draw parallels, and we can also transcend time and space. So I'll give you a very brief comparison between Oedipus the King by Sophocles and Shakuntala by Kalidas. See, what happens is we talk about the fundamental themes. So both Sophocles, his Oedipus the King, and Shakuntala by Kalidas, they explore the profound themes that resonate across cultures. The plays delve into an interplay between fate and individual agency, and also the consequences of the ignorance and the pursuit of truth. So, these are the fundamental themes in both the plays. Now, in both the plays, we also feel that the protagonists as outcasts. The Oedipus and Shakuntala, they share a common thread, as outcasts, and they also share as navigating the complexities of their respective societies and the challenges that they face. Both of them also have the similarity of being ignorant actors. Oedipus and Dushyant, the male protagonists in both the plays, they are portrayed as ignorant actors who are unaware of the true nature of their actions and the consequences that unfold. So, we can have comparative approaches. For example, we can come up with cultural contextualization of the texts. We can compare them at the level of dramatic techniques. We can also talk about the variations in art, particularly in the treatment of character, plot, representation of action on stage. There's recognition and reversal. So we can draw parallels between the journeys of the protagonists or, their journey of self-discovery. When I talk about the similarities and the differences, that there is tragic versus happy ending. Oedipus the king is cast in a tragic mode, while Shakuntala has a happy ending. There is an emphasis on fate versus individual ability, and there's dynamic action and lyrical indifferences. One important feature that I'd like to mention here is crowded stage. Shakuntala features a densely populated stage as compared to sparse representation in Oedipus. So, dear learners, we've been talking about MEG 15, comparative literature. I've given you a brief understanding as to what comparative literature is, what are the various theories, what are the various other key features that we need to understand while talking about comparative literature. And I've also given you an example of, how do you compare literature? So, which means comparative literature in practice. I hope this suffices. This gives you a very basic understanding of the course. Please read more to have a better understanding of the course. That's all for now. Thank you.
Are you a fresh graduate? Do you want to fulfill your educational aspiration by pursuing higher education in various interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary areas like environmental science, environment and occupational health, philosophy, sustainability science, folklore and culture studies? If yes, the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies offers various programs like Master's Program, Graduate Program, Postgraduate Diploma, Certificate and Appreciation Program.